Welcome to the channel. This is where we work with the subtle energies of intuition to help us all move towards improved well-being. And if you're into mindfulness, meditation, dowsing, all that sort of thing, the idea of co-creating your reality, then click on the grey bell icon to get notified every time we do a video upload, and of course, click to subscribe. So today we're going to be talking about elementals. We'll just spend a little bit of time touching on elementals and maybe sort of seeing how we bring them more into our lives. Now, one of the things that I used to do some years ago was that I used to coordinate a group, a sort of shamanic intent and visualization group. It was a healing group, really. When I did this for about 6 or 7 years, and the purpose of it was to enlist the help of elementals and the devic realm, really, to address specific issues in the world, in nature. What we used to do was to have a list of endangered species, effectively, or other issues that we felt we needed to ask the elementals to help with. We would sit in meditation every Sunday at a certain time, and we would enlist the help of the elementals. What I found was that one of the big things that came across in all of those years was that humanity used to have a far greater, I mean, this is not you know, we know this, that we used to have a far greater association and kinship with the elementals generally. Now, elementals are just spirits of nature, you know, they are aspects of our reality, but they're so intrinsically linked into the spirit of nature and to Mother Earth and to Gaia herself. And there was a real feeling in all of the elemental realms that we as a species had just walked out, and it's like we deserted the house and we'd left the elementals to it. And there was a really quite a strong feeling of them not trusting us very much, and who can blame them, to be honest with you. And so anything that we can do that really comes back brings elementals back into our lives, just one by one, really helps us connect to nature, helps the elementals feel that actually, you know, a lot of us do care quite a lot about them and about what is happening in the world. Now, as with all of this, there are various ways of looking at it. And, you know, some 15 years ago, before I had the encounter with the spirit lady in our house, I would have poo-pooed the idea of elementals and fairies, gnomes, all of these sort of things. I wasn't open to this sort of thing at all. I would have thought somebody was completely nuts if they were sitting here doing this. The elementals give us a really interesting space in which to test, if you like, our belief system, because they're easier to actually make contact with, I think, than the angels and the archangels. They can be regarded as, you know, if you like, if you're still a little bit uncomfortable with the idea of, you know, isolated individual aspects of nature being fairies, gnomes, elves, all these sort of things, then you can think of it as an energy level, energy field. And that's the way I kind of started to allow them into my life, was that was the concept that I kind of followed, in the same way as with the angels, because again, at one time I dismissed the idea of angels and thought that was nonsense too. Little did I know. So it's up to you really to decide how you interact and how you assimilate the information that you believe you're getting. Now, this actually leads me to a point that I was asked only this morning on email, which is that somebody asked a question. In one of the videos, I was talking about the fact that our imagination is a two-way channel. And when we're starting to learn to receive intuitive information, we can actually exercise our imagination. And there will come a time when you differentiate, you'll know the feeling, the difference between something that you create from imagination, so you create from within, and information that comes through exactly the same channel and comes to you. Now, this is a classic case in point. When you're becoming or starting to become aware of elementals, then inevitably it's the sort of thing that one thinks, well, I'm just making this up, I'm just imagining this. And you know what, to start with, it doesn't matter. If that's what you believe, if you believe you're making it up and imagining it, then just go with your imagination. Imagine it into existence, right? Because what you're doing is you're exercising that channel and allowing your inner process, whether it be very visually orientated or whether it be a very feeling orientated process, you're exercising that channel. Even if you just think, oh, well, there might be something there. And then you're just like, oh, well, I'm not sure. Let's just play with the energy that you start to feel. So if you're walking through the woods, for example, and you feel like there might be a flowing energy, you know, a couple of feet off the ground, something like that, 18 inches off the ground, or walking through a field and you feel the same sort of thing, just go with that feeling. Sit still, just meditate, allow yourself to drop into that. Because if you sit, and as now in Northern Hemisphere, the weather's becoming really nice now. Spring is really, on the way, and to be able to sit outside and just immerse yourself and get carried away with the fairies, literally in that sense, allow your imagination to take over and take you there with it, right? Because one day very soon after you start doing this as a little bit of an exercise, you'll realize that it's not coming from within. It's information that's coming down to you. It's being downloaded. You're gathering this information, and your perception of what you're experiencing just very subtly changes. And actually, it becomes less of a reverie and a marvel, more a wow. It's an excitement, because you realize that actually you can have some kind of interaction. Now, having said that, interaction with elementals is always going to be different for every single person, right? I mean, I'm really quite jealous of people that have grown up with incredible sensitivity and they can just sort of see elementals everywhere. I don't see them. I really don't see them. I sort of become aware of a presence. And the greatest presence that I feel, the most common presence that I feel, is, as I've just described, this kind of 18-inch high sort of wave of energy. And it's not a plug, but in the book, well, it is a plug. So in the book, I talk about one example, one instance where I went to a small stone circle, and there was a little group of us, and we sat down and we meditated. And I became very, very aware that this little circle that we were sitting just outside had lots of activity in it, lots of activity, but it was all within the circle. And it was very heavy energy. It was quite compressed and compacted. And what I realized was that actually it was full of like little elves, but they couldn't get out. And so we did a little ceremony and allowed them out. And literally, as I sat there, they were running all over me, running up and down the hills and things. They were, I mean, the energy of these elementals, those of you that have encountered them already, you'll know it's very childlike, or it can be very childlike. And so these little elves and fairies were running around and flapping about. And I realized sometime afterwards that it was kind of representative of a freedom that I was allowing in myself as well at the time. So elementals, like everything in our lives and our perception of life, have this amazing ability to represent, to be symbolic of things and change, right? So there are different ways of looking at it. So we have earth elementals, primarily are things like gnomes, dwarves, fairies, elves, these sort of things. Okay, and I'll just tell you a little thing about a gnome. I have a favorite gnome, and this gnome is a little chap that I call Benjamin. And I came across Benjamin soon after I met Adrian, because Adrian Ingleton Webber, who I learned a lot about the house healing from, right? Adrian came in and cleared our house, and a few days after he'd done that, I went out into one of our outhouses and was rather taken aback by the feeling that was unusual, the feeling of a presence in there. And I thought, well, this is daft, because this is Adrian's cleared the place. And then this feeling that I got was a response of, yeah, well, he's cleared the place, he's kicked me out of the house. And this was a little gnome, in the outhouse,
who Adrian had just sort of shifted along with everybody else, and he was there. And I had this whole conversation with Benjamin, as it turned out. Now, Benjamin is now part of my healing team when I do house healing work. He lives here in a stone that I have just outside the office. There's a stone about this big, and that's the stone that he went into when because I invited him back into the house where we used to live. Benjamin I invite him in every time I do the healing work on a house. I ask him by name, and if you want to sort of set up a relationship, a friendship with any of these elementals, you do have to ask them, and you do have to respect, like any other living being, you respect their wishes. You don't want to go out on a walk and the first elf or gnome or fairy that you come across and sort of grab them and take them home with you. That's not the way it's going to work at all. You will know in your heart of hearts anyway whether the energy that you encounter is something that you want to be familiar with, and you will know also in your heart whether it's appropriate for you to have this as part of your either a healing team or for your own healing, right? So you're either healing for other people or you're healing for yourself. I mean, these are really good healing energies.